It's 5:30. I think we can get started. I don't know if we're expecting any other members. I haven't heard from. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a called order and a roll call.
Okay, thank you. Katrina Kindle, Peggy Patton,
Here.
Renee Nicholson,
Here.
an old friend, Jane McClintock,
Present.
Melissa Stratton,
Here.
Tony Allegretti.
Present. I believe we have a quorum.
Yes, sir, we do.
Great, thank you, Tom. So we'll move on to B. This is approval of the agenda. So we took off the TASER review that was scheduled for time, given the amount of unfinished business we have. So that was the only thing I think that there may have been plans on doing, but apologies to UPD for preparing that for today, even though it's not going to be heard, but we will take it up next meeting. Other than that, is there any motions to change the agenda? Okay, without that, then we'll move to approve it if we can get a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
And we can just vote by, I always want to say ascension, but it's
Affirmation.
affirmation. It's an old Catholic school problem of mine. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion carries. We'll approve the agenda. And then we'll go to the approval of the minutes, which is C1. That was our meeting from last week. That was attached to the agenda. Thank you, Tom and Carla, for preparing this and the minutes. Is there any additions, corrections, changes?
Wait, is the minutes from March 18th?
From March 18th, excuse me, yes.
And there's another set of minutes still in process
Yes, that was from the previous.
from April
Right,
24.
this was 2 meetings ago. This was the regular meeting. This was with the TASER review that we had, and then the April 23rd was the special meeting. But this is for March 18th. I believe it was March. Yes, that's my error on my notes. Okay,
Did
but,
anybody want another copy? I have a paper copy.
okay, if there's no additions or corrections, we can, if we could entertain a motion to approve in a second.
I move approval of the March 18th minutes.
I second.
Okay, we can do another affirmation vote. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So the minutes for the March 18th meeting are approved. We'll move on to public input. It doesn't look like we have any people in attendance. For those listening and watching at home, we take public input at the meetings. Those can be submitted via email as well. You don't have to appear in person. You're welcome to if you'd like. We don't take remote public input, but you can email. We'll read it into the record if anyone out there listening cares to do so. But without any input, we'll move on to E, which is unfinished business, and that'll take us to E1. Deputy Chief Cervantes is here. This was added by myself, essentially, in reviewing the manual, the use of force manual, and just the manual in general from the UPD. We had some questions regarding the use of the particular company, Deputy Chief Cervantes has been kind enough to put together a presentation for us to discuss that, and then we can entertain questions regarding the policy. And this may be this may not be the only presentation. We may have follow-up questions on this. But again, without any delay, I guess we'll take it over to Deputy Chief. Thank you for attending the meeting, and I'll let you have the mic.
Thank you. Board members, thank you for having me back. As some pointed out before the meeting, I just missed you guys so much. I couldn't stay away. So Without further ado, yes, these questions, there was a number of questions that were submitted to us. I'm going to do my best to give you an overview of this process. So obviously, if you have questions throughout, don't hesitate to ask, and any additional questions afterwards, I'd be happy to answer the best that I can. All right. This presentation is intended to explain how UPD policies are developed, updated, reviewed, and approved, including the role Lexipol plays within that process. Within that process. It is also intended to provide transparency into how UPD incorporates legal and best practice updates and ensures policies meet the standards of the community while supporting safe and effective policing. Our goal is not only to answer the questions that were submitted to us by Ms. Boyd, but also to provide an overview of the process and include why we have continued to use Lexipol. So first question, who's involved in how policies are created? One thing that I can't stress enough is that it's not just the police department. The policies are based in foundation in federal law, Illinois law, various precedents that are set through court decision, ILETSB requirement. ILETSB is the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. They're the ones that certify officers to be police officers within the state of Illinois, as well as national best practices, Lexipol guidance and updates, UPD command staff review, and ultimately rests with the chief of police approval. So I reached out to Lexipol to gather some stats from them, and this is the information that they sent back to me. UPD uses Lexipol as a professional resource to help ensure department policies remain legally current, professionally informed, and aligned with the evolving best practices. So what is Lexipol? It is a policy management and risk management platform used by public safety agencies nationwide to provide, and they currently provide services to over 12,000 agencies. Approximately 670,000 first responders use Lexipol, and they have partnerships with approximately 170 public safety associations and risk pools.
Is this a nonprofit or is it a?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I doubt it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that their affiliates are all for profit, but
No, I mean the
It's a
company itself, is it a?
Lexipol, I would imagine that it is a for-profit company. Lexipol provides policy guidance, legal update notifications, and best practice recommendations for law enforcement agencies. Lexipol policies are informed by legal professionals, law enforcement subject matter experts, nationally recognized public safety organizations, and evolving legal standards. So who do they get some of these things from? And this is just some. Remember, there's 170 public safety organizations. These are some of the ones that they specifically told me that they receive information from that drive or at least influence some of the updates that we get. Lexipol policies are informed by legal professionals, law enforcement subject matter expert, nationally recognized public safety organizations involving legal standards and evolving legal standards. Some of them include the FBI, International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Police Executive Research Forum, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, public safety subject matter experts, and legal professionals. Again, this is just a few of them. So what is UPD's role in the process? UPD does not automatically adopt Lexipol policies. I wanted to make that absolutely clear. We do not they don't dictate our policies. They provide guidance. UPD command staff reviews all proposed updates on a quarterly basis. We ensure policies align with Illinois law and local needs. We determine whether updates are appropriate for Urbana. We modify policies when necessary. We evaluate the operational impact, and ultimately, The chief of police makes the decision, but it is reviewed throughout the entire command staff. It's not just one person saying this. Needs to be that way. We provide input, and then the chief ultimately will make the decision, but it's based on the input from multiple command staff personnel.
So is any policy change, does that get reflected in the UPD manual, the policy manual?
No.
So sometimes it's changed, but it's not reflected in the current policy manual.
Yeah, no, they're not always, because we don't always adopt them. If it doesn't apply to us, for instance, Lexipol has policies on drones. We don't have drones, so we wouldn't use that as a template. If we did have them, we would take the national best standard or best practices, the legal standards, and then we would adopt them based on how it fit Urbana. The same thing for Texas, or Austin, Texas isn't going to apply in Urbana based on population and other factors that we would have to consider, as well as local government, all of these things that we would have to take into consideration. And I'm about to provide you an example directly from Lexipol.
No, sorry, I meant if there was a change, like if you guys went through the process, you approved the policy change, that would be reflected in the policy manual.
Yes, and I'm going to show you an example of exactly what that looks like. So I found one that was an update, a policy recommendation and an update that came in. As you can see from this, it's regarding storage at home for weapons. So it falls under weapon storage. If you look at the release notes, this is what we get when we see the release notes saying, hey, there's an update, there's something that you guys need to know about as law enforcement. A law has changed, something needs to be updated. We look at it, and it's regarding 430 ILCS 645, 430 ILCS 64/10. That is able to be seen on the right-hand side. If you notice, one of the things that is different from the update than from what exists currently in the policy on the left-hand side is what is marked out in red, and then the addition would be the blue. Why is the information that's marked out in red? Because UPD's policy is more restrictive than what originally Lexipol recommended for us. So we take it and we made it vehicle as well as home. And then we add in there that no weapon should be stored unless it's in a safe or in a lockbox approved in a vehicle. So when Lexipol made this, they just noted that, hey, you guys added that stuff in red. The actual legal update that they're recommending is the information in blue. So what we would do in this case, this would go to Deputy Chief Mikulik, normally is the one that gets these, and it's either him or I that would review those, and then we would assign it out depending on the content, how much was involved in it. This would be a simple legal change. The lieutenant would then look at it. They would say, okay, does this fit us? Does this fit Urbana? And if so, we need to incorporate it in the policy. Then we all meet together, the command staff as a whole, including the chief. We discuss it and we say, this is the change that's recommended. This is the reason that it's recommended. Sometimes it's black and white and easy, especially when it comes to law. This is the guidance. This is what we would do. Now, we would not take out the red. In this case, we would say, we've already made that Urbana policy to add that extra additional restriction in there. We wouldn't take that out, but we would add the blue. So it does provide us a good deal of discretion when we're looking at how to best incorporate some of these recommendations. It's just that foundational legal and national best practices from the number of sources that exist, including federal law and state law, that are thrown in there for us to consider.
So once that is accepted, does that get pushed out to the website, or how does the public see that change?
The public would see it, everything, as far as I know, and this is as far as I know, so don't take this written in stone. I know that the policy was online at some point. Mm-hmm. I don't think the public can access it through Lexipol because each individual officer has an account. So when it comes for the public, I don't know if it's still online. I know at one point it was.
It's under the community safety tab, I think.
Okay,
I mean, I pulled it up yesterday. The last copyright date is from August of '24.
okay. Well,
I don't know, and I'm looking at these changes, and those aren't reflected as of yesterday evening.
well,
But that's what I was just curious, is like, does this automatically then get published or pushed out to the PDF that's sitting on?
it will now.
Yeah,
So now that you've brought this to my attention, this is something, like I said, this one didn't fall under my purview in the past. Since Deputy Chief Mikulik and I both kind of tag team this stuff, we can make sure at least after quarterly meetings, these things are up, are put out and they're attached. And the only thing that we would take out is anything that would compromise anything that we do from a tactical sense. We wouldn't obviously put that information in there because we wouldn't want to compromise officer safety. But again,
and sorry, you said each officer has their own account with Lexipol?
yep,
Oh, okay. So they don't have to rely on email or something, like they log in? Is that for the training things as well?
well, they'll get both. That's one of the benefits of Lexipol. It makes it much more efficient. So we say every officer that we have with us, they'll be thrown into our account, our overall account through the city, through the police department. And then when we push out updates, they'll get an email notification. They'll have to log in and they'll have to acknowledge if we change something. So say, for instance, in this one, the storage at home, it was originally just storage at home. When the policy was changed to add information in there about expectations or requirements for weapon storage within vehicles, they would see that side-by-side comparison, and they would have to say and click, I acknowledge this, I understand it, so that they understand what our expectation and what our guidelines are. Furthermore, Lexipol takes that information and provides us a report so that we can see every officer that's in compliance and has acknowledged the policy, and anyone that are not, we can address that through their supervisors. But again, Lexipol does not dictate UPD policy, they provide guidance. All right, so Lexipol is not a replacement when it comes to decision-making. It is a professional resource designed to help agencies maintain legally current and professionally informed policies. Professional policing requires balancing national standards, legal requirements, local operational realities, officer safety, and community expectations. Lexipol is one of several tools that assist UPD in maintaining that balance. So to answer each one of your individual questions, does UPD track or archive all current and previous policy manuals? Yes, going back to 2014 when we started using Lexipol. I wasn't an administrator in 2014. I don't know exactly how that process was before, but I know that when we started using Lexipol, the process was very much, very similar to what I described. And we know that it is archived going back for any changes. Every one of those policies is there from 2014 forward. I'm sorry, I don't know the month. I believe it was August, was when we actually started using the software.
Do you know what was done before? What?
I don't.
Okay.
I know that if there was a policy update, typically we would have got a notification from our sergeant at briefing. I can't recall specifically how that went from the time that I started in 2006.
No, I mean, what was used before Lexipol? Was it
I don't think there was a
written in-house, or-
company. I think it was a Microsoft Word document.
Okay.
And so it was antiquated. I mean, so this was just a much, much more efficient process to be involved with. And because it was nationally recognized by so many agencies, this seemed to be the best practice. Is UPD made aware of new versions of the manual? Yes, our personnel, and that's the way that I took that question, are required to review policies. I'm not going to talk about that again. That's essentially what I told you guys before. How does UPD decide to adopt new versions of the manual? I put these questions together because I think the answer basically incorporates both of those. And what input does UPD have in the content of the manual? UPD command staff reviews all proposed policy updates and determines whether they should be accepted, modified, or discussed further based on Illinois law or banner operational need, training consideration, and officer and community safety. Lexipol provides Professionally developed guidance and recommendations, policies are not automatically adopted. UPD leadership, which collectively brings well over 100 years of law enforcement experience, along with extensive training and higher education, evaluates and adapts policies locally, with final approval resting with the chief. How did UPD come to select Lexipol? Like I said, I was an administrator in 2014. While I was not involved in the original decision to adopt Lexipol in 2014, it is reasonable to conclude the department selected it because it provided a more efficient and structured process for maintaining legally current and professionally informed policies. Lexipol is widely used throughout public safety nationwide, and it helps agencies stay up to date with changes in law, evolving best practices, policy consistency, and training needs, while still allowing the department to customize policy to fit local operational needs.
Would this have been something that would have been brought to the board or to the city council, or would that have been made, would that just have been an internal department decision?
I think it depends on the amount. If it would have required a budget line item specifically or a budget amendment, then yes. Other than that, I don't know. I don't know if they would have had to propose that in 2014. I don't know what it costs either. But I don't know what the guidelines were in 2014 as far as what would have to come to council. I imagine that we had to bid it out because I know that process has been around for a very long time. Now the amounts have changed as inflation and other outside factors come in. But as far as the exact process in 2014, I can't tell you that for sure.
Would a policy manual system like this have been something that like an insurance company would be looking at as far as covering the city, like having this kind of up-to-date policy so that, you know, they could point to that as a way to, or as a requirement that it would be had if they're going to cover this department?
I don't know if it is a requirement, but if I was an insurance agent, I sure would want them to have policy and guidelines because we have things in here for vehicle use. So I guess the thing that comes immediately to mind is vehicle insurance, and we have specific policies that dictate how we drive, what we're required to do, whether we use our mobile data computer while we're driving, certain things that are important that we lay out as an agency of expectations of our officers. Whether or not, again, it's a requirement, I don't know, but I wouldn't be opposed to showing an insurance agent our policy, and I guess I equate that to the restrictions now for kids, you know, with good grades, you know, making sure that, because age is obviously a factor, that this would be considered a factor as well. But I also know that all of our vehicles are covered under one policy. It's a fleet policy for all of the city vehicles. So I can't speak to what that insurance would require for every department.
I was thinking more along the lines of like a use of force liability coverage when an officer is involved in a, you know, in a shooting or a death. Is an insurance provider, whoever that is, are they looking at, you know, does the city have a policy, a police department policy, not necessarily specifically with regards to vehicle coverage, but I'm thinking more of a use of force issue.
From a civil liability standpoint, yes. And I can see where you're coming from on that. I would imagine they did, but I do not know that answer for sure. I can get that answer for you. I have it written down to check into it. But it makes sense that it would have that.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't look back to 2014 when this was approved. I didn't know when it was approved, but it's something that can be checked as well.
I have nothing else unless you guys have further questions. Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, how often are these sorts of policy updates made?
That depends on the legislator or legislation. That's one aspect of it. Another
Once a year, more than once a year?
more than once a year. So
Okay.
we review them quarterly, but it depends on how many things are either recommended by Lexipol and then how many things that we see. So say, for instance, Board Member McClintock brought up something recently about the Spanish Spanish stickers on the vehicles. And while that's not in policy, that would be something that we could put in policy. So we have the authority also when certain things, or let's say an officer wasn't wearing, and this is in policy, they should be wearing their seatbelts. But say that this was a gap that we saw that was brought to our attention, that these things weren't happening, we could add those things. So to give you an exact number of how many times, I can't give you that exact number, but it is as needed and as either legislation or best practices change.
That makes sense. I guess, and then the second part of my question, you said you guys review this quarterly. When you say you, do you mean like every member of the police force, or who review? Like, I guess my question is there some sort of, and maybe this isn't related, but it seems like if there's policies that are changing multiple times a year, is there also then a way to make sure that the officers are sort of like internalizing new policies and making sure that they know, are they rereading it, are they getting a test, do you know what I mean?
They're acknowledging the policy. So when
Then,
when it comes in, when the changes are determined by us and we push that out to them, every officer and employee are professional personnel are also on that list to acknowledge our policies for the police department. So that's how we maintain whether or not that they have read it, because by them clicking that they acknowledge it, it's good. To your question about how often, I can't tell you how it was always done before. I can tell you that we would periodically get them as officers and as sergeants. After becoming administration, I know that the responsibility to check into Lexipol and then anything else was made by command staff as things came up, like I said, the example with the seatbelt. Or the deputy chief would look through Lexipol for any of the updates and then assign them out throughout the quarter, and then we've discussed them quarterly. If it was something obviously that needed an immediate change and put out, the chief can do it, the deputy chief can do it,
yeah,
or
I guess my question was that, and then that when, aside from the officers getting a notification that there was policy change, and then them, you know, visually reading it, and then also confirming that they have read it and that they understand there's no other way of them, like, refreshing. That was my question. Like, with policy changing so frequently, there's no, I mean, I guess that for me, that would be confusing if policy is changing multiple times a year. And then my question is there like a mandatory or any sort of thing, like a review to make sure that officers have reread the policy?
well, the review portion of it would be them acknowledging it and then us pulling the quarterly reports to make sure that they're up to date with standards. As far as anything else, as we see the things, that's where first line supervisors come in. They want to make sure that the officers are abiding by policy, because we have policy that covers a lot. I mean, one of the policies that we just looked at not long ago was like regarding spacing for lactation. We now have a lactation room, but it is within PD policy. It's also federal law and state law, so we had to make sure that our federal law and state law mandates were in line with our police officers, our female police officers, and that they had that space. And if they didn't, we needed to make sure that that space existed. Now, the whole city took it upon, but we also have one section of that in our policy. So if that was brought to us and we weren't doing that, that would be something that we would address no differently than a first-line supervisor addressing
So, but then
somebody.
that's retroactively correcting versus that's, I mean, like I said, probably not related to this topic, but it seems more retroactively fixing things when policy is not followed versus refreshing ourselves on what policy is.
So I see where you're coming from on it.
Requires you to not follow policy in order for it to be acted on, just the
No.
way.
No, I see what you're saying, and periodically, there are policies that we do update within briefing training, especially the policies like in regards to pursuits or felony vehicle stops, the things that we are encountering that we know that officers need to constantly train on. And it's not always policy that just dictates that. It is our training requirements through ILETSB. But our policy dictates that we must stay up to date with certain standards. So we're constantly training. We just had a meeting today where our new services lieutenant basically said right now in the first quarter, we were up to, I think it was 636 hours of training time. So we're constantly training and constantly evolving, which is more than it has been in the past. So we are constantly doing that, and some of those things touch policy.
Could you explain the phrase command staff and who comprises that?
Sure, it's the administration, so it's lieutenants and above. So right now, we have 2 patrol lieutenants, 1 services lieutenant, 1 investigations lieutenant, 2 deputy chiefs, and then the chief of police.
Officer Svanjits, is there, outside of what Lexipol pushes out, are there other sources that the command staff looks at to make changes to the policy? And if so, is that something that can be accomplished through the Lexipol software?
So there's 2 questions there. So one, the first part is, yes, there are other sources that we could look at. Lexipol is pretty much all-encompassing. We also have, like I said, the discretion if we notice something or if we know something is coming up. So, for example, we made sure to look at our First Amendment policy when it came to protected speech and assemblies. We made sure to push that out, knowing that there were different protests that were going on and that our officers understood what left and right boundaries they had as far as what people can do and what they couldn't do, which was what was illegal, what was not illegal, what was constitutionally protected, and which wasn't. So we can constantly be revisiting these things and, depending on circumstances, amend them if necessary.
But I mean, is there anything in particular that the department looks at besides what Lexipol pushes out?
Yes. If, say, for instance, the Champaign County State's, go ahead.
I mean, like another, like, board or another association or somebody else that creates policy content, I guess, like a, you know, the American Law Institute or, yeah, you know, something like that.
I don't have the long-term knowledge to be able to go back to tell you in the past what has been done. What I can tell you now is that if there was something that was brought up wherever it was from, if it was credible, that is something that we would obviously discuss or look into. How often is it done? Is it done on a regular basis? I don't want to sit here and tell you no, that it's never been done and that we haven't looked at something, but is it regular that we look at another source? No, not that I'm aware of.
I had one more question. You had the chain of where you take inputs from. Is there, has the department considered a spot for community input on any of these things? I know we're discussing it here now, and I think that's great, but does UPD ever put out like a request for comment on a change in policy? You know, something like the storage of a firearm guidelines in the home or vehicle. You know, maybe you don't get a lot of feedback on that, but you know, reviewing your First Amendment policy in regards to protests, especially given the last couple of years, that may garner a lot of comments or you know, either positive or negative, depending on what the change would be.
Sure.
But it seems like something like that could easily fit in here when command staff is reviewing, you know, similar to what you file in a legislative, when a witness slip, yes, thank you. Something like that. Is that something that can be done through Lexipol? Do they offer a witness slip process similar to what you see on the General Assembly website? Or is that something that UPD could take into account?
There was a lot of things there. Does Lexipol do it? I don't know if it's as rudimentary as they take suggestions. They're a company. Could somebody ask them? But on a more broad level, I would say that based on the 170 different associations that they're already involved with, that community input is a part of that because of those various organizations that are providing guidance. Do we specifically at Urbana solicit for public input when it comes to that? No, we don't. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to saying that, you know, community input is valuable and it's important, but when it comes to actual operational policies, tactical decisions, legal decisions, those are things that while we all day should hear input and listen to it, it can't be dictated solely by public input. It should be one of many factors that are considered into it and shaping it. But one of the things that I've always stood firm on is when it comes to community safety and officer safety, these are things that are paramount. And while people may have different opinions when it comes to certain tactics that police use that are controversial, at the end of the day, my goal and my responsibility is to make sure that the community is safe, that our officers are safe. And even if somebody doesn't like it, it's not in the court of popular opinion. It is what we have to do in order to keep people safe. That is our goal. So while I'm not opposed to input, and I think that I'm objective enough to hear what people have to say, doesn't mean that I always have to agree with it. But I think there are good points that are often made by people that we need to consider and that we need to be mindful of. So again, and I've talked to Chief about this too, we're not opposed to that as far as input.
It goes a long way just to feel heard, even
Absolutely.
even if like there, obviously a law is a law, okay? And if it's something in law and has to change policy, the public input really can't change that. But sometimes, like, if we're talking about bridging and like healing the relationship between police and the community, then sometimes it just goes a long way just to be heard. And also to give the police an opportunity to say, hey, we're just trying to keep you guys safe. And like sometimes to say that face to face, and it makes a better connection on people than to just sort of have this vague idea of that being the case.
Because I said so.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I think that's why things like this are important. We do the TASER reviews. We discuss things. Other use of force incidents that have happened, they've been laid out and discussed. It doesn't mean, and discussed, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to agree with it. But it's based on these fundamental principles of law, best practice, national best practice, and what we're doing, I think so far, and I'm not saying that the command staffs in the past have not done that, but that's one of the things that I know that we're focusing on.
Can I just ask one quick question? We put this on the agenda as use of force manual updates, but this is actually just, all that we've discussed is true of all the policy, right? Not just the use of force policy?
I'm sorry, say that again?
This is for the entire policy manual,
Yes.
not just use of force. And then I wondered, you know, we have and this is kind of to Tony's question maybe about where of course, the entire policy is not publicly available, but those parts of it, like as redacted, and if it lives somewhere on the website, I think it might be useful to put it on the use of force page, the use of force policy, that part of the, because, you know, if you're going there, and especially for my convenience when I'm writing the report, no, but I noticed that it was not linked there, and I thought that might be useful. Sounds like the officers have handy access to it, but for community members, maybe.
Sure.
Has the department ever reviewed any of the critiques of Lexipol and its policies in general? I spent at least a couple hours reviewing some law review articles discussing them, some about their founder, and I won't get into the details here, but I'm just curious if the department has looked at that. I mean, some of the things I read were concerning, and I don't know if there's another, if there's a Coke to the Pepsi of Lexipol or vice versa as far as another policy-making entity whose ownership may better align with the city or with the views of the residents here?
I don't know the answer to that question. I hear what you're saying, and I guess the way that I kind of process that is, I don't know what Henry Ford did, but I don't know if everybody's going to stop driving a quality product that's made by Henry Ford. This is a quality product that exists within the law enforcement community. It's a normal standard. I'm assuming you're talking about Gordon Graham, and
Well, right, the case. I was more concerned with the owner, Bruce Prayett, and some of his statements and in his webinars that he posted through Lexipol, specifically that he prides himself on not including the word shall in the policies, and that's in order to give the policies to be as flexible as possible. I think he's quoted as saying, "Nothing in police work is black and white except the car you drive. Policies need to be flexible." And the idea being giving as much discretion as possible to the officers. And I mean, I see that in our TASER policy specifically. So that's, again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
no, I like this. This is exactly what we need to be doing.
But and I can send you some of the review articles I've been looking at. I haven't finished them, but some of those things were concerning to me. I don't know if it was addressed when the use of force 10 guided principles was discussed, but that was relatively recently. And again, it's something I think could potentially be reviewed by the department. Again, I don't know if there's another product that operates like Lexipol as far as it seems like it's very clean and it pushes things out. It can alert all the officers and it does the day-to-day work well, but sometimes, my concern more is the content of the policy and what its designs are for, as opposed to how well it pushes it out.
Sure. No, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I hear you on that. That's a common thing that has been heard, and it is controversial when it comes to certain aspects of law enforcement. And I don't know why you guys can't see this. I don't know why you guys can't see my screen.
It's up. We can see your presentation here.
I think I could be interested in maybe if you have more, okay, because I didn't know any of that, and obviously I'm sure you have other examples, but just sort of like hearing that one statement that you said, I'm like, that sounds fine. So I don't know if there's like.
I can share it around. I didn't share it in advance. Again, I wasn't trying to play ambush
I gotcha.
here.
I gotcha.
No,
It was just
no,
something
and I like it. This is exactly what we're supposed to be doing here. You're asking questions about this, and you're bringing up legitimate concerns. What I can tell you is in the UPD policy, again, Lexipol and Bruce, whoever, I thought you were talking about Gordon Graham, but Bruce, whoever, doesn't dictate Urbana policy. We look at Urbana policy, and I can tell you we use the word shall. Do I believe that in all circumstances shall should be used? No. We also have a portion of our policy that allows for deviation from policy under certain circumstances. And why is that? Because we can't foresee every single incident that's ever going to happen. And we've talked about this when it comes to use of force and tasers. And that is dictated by the highest court in the land because we can't foresee everything. So we have to look at each individual instance as the unique incidents through the eyes of an officer. That's the way I think that we approach the policy as well. It doesn't mean that we're condoning inappropriate behavior. It doesn't mean that we're condoning any type of, that we're allowing officers to go out and just make up their own rules. That's not at all the case. We are grounded in principles of the Constitution, of the law, and what our policy dictates is, in some cases, it is an absolute shall, but not in all cases. And we do have to have that leniency and that guidance when it comes to certain things like tasers and use of force, because that is dictated by the highest law in the land, the Supreme Court. They've looked at several cases, which I know we've talked about here before, but Graham v. Connor, there's all different cases that have looked at it and said we can't determine based on, We can't just make it black and white and put a thing like shall in there and say that you're violating. We have to look at the specific incident as a totality, the totality of the circumstances.
Sure, I think the critique is that the reliance on Graham v. Connor doesn't provide as much guidance as a Lexapol might suggest it does, in that giving, I think the language from the case is, a totality of the circumstance, to use reasonable force when necessary, leaves a lot. It doesn't give a lot for police departments to go by. It's very broad, and there are studies showing that when you restrict uses of force, it makes the department safe, it makes the officers more safe, and it makes the residents that interact with them more safe, or safer, I should say. So that's some of the critique I've seen, that Lexapol is overly reliant on, 40-year-old case law. There hasn't been a lot developed by the Supreme Court giving guidance specifically. I mean, we see it a lot here in Illinois based on legislation. But again, that's some of the critique of Lexapol. And, my question was, has the department looked at that and decided to, I guess, just review, you've had the program for 10, 12 years. Does it still align with the goals of the department and the input from the community?
No, that's a great point, and it's a great question that you asked there. One of the things specifically that I want to point out is when we're talking about use of force, we do have a civilian on our use of force review. We do take input when it comes to especially use of force and sharing that information. As you had mentioned before, it is available, and we are in a forum like this where we have civilian input when we're describing things to you. The civilian that is part of our use of force meetings is in there, and he is he's a doctor from the U of I, and he is evaluating as we discuss use of force issues. So when it comes to that use of force policy, and I think specifically what you're talking about when you had mentioned the tasers before, we're doing that in Urbana. We don't let Lexapol dictate what we do in Urbana. They provide guidance. And some of those things, we are doing that. As far as the other things that you mentioned, as far as case law evolving, Graham v. Connor may be 40 years old, but Graham v. Connor is not the only case. And case after case has been evaluated, not only using Graham v. Connor, but the prongs and the standards that exist when we use force, and that's what we're trained on. That's what we have to know to avoid any type of excessive use of force thing. So I would be glad to discuss that further with you offline if you like, or I can bring, next time I come, other cases for you to look at that are much more recent than Graham v. Connor that obviously address use of force issues.
That would be great, yeah.
Okay.
I can send you the things that I've been looking at, but.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want one comment. Thank you so much. I mean, as you've pointed out before, it sounds like UPD is really committed to trying to have a working relationship with this board, but also with the community, which is very hard to do because there's so much information to get out. The thing that comes to my mind as you're describing policy changes and how we best get the information out is something that I've always hoped that we would get around to doing more than we do now, which is sort of sponsor something akin to listening sessions between UPD and the community, just as a way for each other to keep each other up to date. And I was thinking about the policy changes you ticked off here today. Clearly, not every policy change it warrants a listening session, but the key ones would, changes in use of force, as a way of community knowing what's changed and why, not because you're saying, let me know if this is okay or not, but this is where we're coming from. Other changes that I see coming down the pike is when we implement the Alternative Response Task Force, which sounds like we're getting very close to doing. Another good opportunity for a listening session on this is why it's here. Other changes in best practices that would affect people, just so people have an opportunity to hear what's changed and why, and then for you to hear how that's perceived from the public. Nothing may change that night, but as Melissa pointed out, information just goes a long way to having people feel like they're part of the process.
And personalizing their police force, which I think is a big thing that people kind of just think about it like us versus them. And like there has to be some way for like people to sit down in front of you guys and talk to you. And that doesn't mean that people are going to show up, but we can sure try, you know.
Sure, and I think that this administration has really worked on that and improved community engagement, as is evident through our Facebook account and other social media platforms, that we are out there making those connections within the community. We've been doing it for a long time, we just haven't publicized it, and we haven't taken it to this level. As far as the listening session goes, I'm totally in support of things like that. I believe that as long as things are productive, then and cordial, we should have as many discussions as we can, as long as at the end of the day, sometimes we can agree to disagree. Those listening sessions that Chief Boone had when he first got here, I attended, I believe, all of them. And we still do things like that where we're out in the community talking and listening to what people said. Every time we have an interaction with somebody on the street, we have an opportunity to represent the department for what we are, not for what we're painted as always. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I would welcome those things, and I believe that Chief Boone would as well.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief, I would say just maybe one final comment. If the head of the department is reviewing these updates every quarter, this board would welcome, if you want to make that input or maybe start here, we would be happy to review or provide comment to it if it works within the schedule, or if it doesn't have to be every quarter. But if there's one quarter coming up that aligns with everyone's schedules, that might be a good opportunity to maybe test run providing commentary. Obviously, the department can approve it if it likes, but, giving community input, we may actually get some public input from that meeting if that were to happen. But so that's maybe something we could attempt in the future.
You're talking above my pay grade.
Not too much, though.
Not too much, but no, I can tell you that I've actually broached this issue already with the chief, and we've had this discussion. And while I can't talk about specifics, whether or not it would be the entire board, but having input to a certain level, I think those are all things that not only Deputy Chief Mikulik and I, but the chief as well, would welcome. And again, it's all on the same parameters of input, not final say, and that's what it is. But I have no problem at all listening, and the things that we can change that are within our realm, something that we're missing. We don't know everything, and we haven't seen everything. So the more input and the more collaboration, I'm not opposed to that at all. But I can't make any promises on that.
Sure.
But I will definitely discuss it further with the chief and see what that looks like with the city as well.
Right. Any other final comments?
No, we'll just thank you. And also, whether or not we have input, it actually, because we're supposed to know the policy, would probably be good if we got an update. Obviously, we're not in Lexipol, but yeah.
No, it's on my list. Our
Okay,
next
cool. Yeah, just
quarterly
trying to keep up.
meeting for policies. And when I say quarterly, again, I want to make it clear, it doesn't mean that if something changes that is absolutely necessary to put out right away that we don't do that. Like I said, Deputy Chief Mikulik is usually the one that's on top of those things. But each command staff member has input on policy that we wouldn't put that out. We would obviously put it out. But when we're looking at a lot of the collective things, as we're assigning them out, the lieutenants need to do research on them and say, okay, well, how could this best fit Urbana? And then we collectively discuss it. The next one is in July. So anything after that, I will, obviously this is recorded, and I will make sure that that information is put out as far as the stuff that we can put out. The stuff that is redacted for tactical purposes or anything that could compromise an investigation, we obviously wouldn't put out. But the stuff that we can to make sure that that is up to date, because August of 2024 is it's unsatisfactory. They need to be pushed out further than that. And I would propose, and I will discuss it with Chief and Deputy Chief Mikulik, but pushing those out within a month at least of final approval, because if something needs to go back after the initial meeting where we're all collaborating, we need time to be able to amend that for chief to review it and approve it.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess I was thinking that we might not always go check the website to see that there's a new document, and then we might not always know what it is that changed. So if you think of it, and I realize you have a lot of balls in the air, just like the officers on the street get a little notification, these are the things that changed. It might be helpful if you think of, copy Civilian Police Review Board at Urbana, hey, we made a change, it's this. And then we'll know, so that we're aware. And it sounds like a lot of times they're probably minor and don't necessarily, wouldn't impact what we're assessing, but, in the interest of us trying to stay current.
That's a
But
great
I
suggestion.
have,
Yeah, I don't know,
I'm sure I
I'm
have
not
a
going
lot
to
of
promise you
policy
that right now,
to
but
plow through to get it.
I will definitely bring it up, and that's something that we can explore and see what we can do to notify you of those things. But I don't know how that would work logistically when it comes to the specific changes. I think it would be easy to say, yes, this policy was updated, but to go in and do a side-by-side, that might be a little time-consuming. Yep, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's a very reasonable request, and that's something that we can explore further.
Well, thank you again, Deputy Chief. We appreciate you taking the time, putting together the presentation, fielding our questions.
Sure.
And we look forward to having you again. Again, thank you for coming to the meeting.
Yep, no problem. All right, thank you, guys.
All right, so we'll move on to E2. This is the rescheduled hearing regarding Appeal 2025-07. I believe we need a motion to go into executive session for this to discuss.
Actually, sir, we're not able to do an executive session because our city attorney was unavailable today. And so that's why it's listed as rescheduling the appeal hearing.
Oh, okay.
So what we're looking at is two options, I believe, for clarity. One, the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 24th. And then there's a date that was added to the poll. I don't know if we have enough folks on that yet. And that was on Wednesday, June 10th, is a potential date for a special meeting.
Okay.
But otherwise, what we reviewed because of the city attorney not being here was to find out the clarity of the appeal process as far as the number of days. And what I was given by the city clerk indicates that typically there's 45 working days when an appeal comes in. If that date can't be met within 45 working days, then the board has the requirement you can be open-ended after that, but you have to update both the complainant or the appellant at this point and UPD. And that would be through writing, it'd be an email if need be. But basically, so in this particular case, what had already happened was we had said, can we have more time after the meeting that took place on, I believe it was April 24th, excuse me. And the appellant agreed to that. Now, because it's still open-ended, but that's what we want to make sure
The appellant was given notice. This was over email. I don't think there was any objection to that. I don't think the ordinance doesn't, it's open-ended, essentially.
Yes, and there was some confusion from Carla. She thought it was 30 days, but it's open-ended once you get past
45. If you give notice.
The main thing is it's communicating to both sides,
Right.
the UPD as well as the appellant.
And I don't want this to be continued on any longer than it needs to be. I don't think the city attorney is necessary to be here to discuss it. We don't have to take a final vote tonight. That's not on the agenda. But I think
Well, my understanding was that I wasn't in that room when there was a closed session, but my understanding was that you wanted more time to discuss it in a closed session.
right.
And the city attorney does need to be there for a closed session.
Aren't we all the people that were here at the last one anyway?
Peggy was not here.
Oh, I see. Makes sense.
The city attorney is required to be there for a closed session?
Correct.
Oh, okay, I was not aware of that. Okay. Okay,
I'm not sure if that
Yeah, is June
request has
4th
come around.
the one he just added,
There's
that
a
very
quorum
first date?
already for,
the June 10th,
The
has everybody read that?
June 10th, I'm sorry, yes, June 10th, that would be in 3 weeks. Is that, did everyone say they were free for that?
no.
Okay.
We had one no from Renee.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we're out of town.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that I said no for whichever week. I know that I said no for, I think I said no for the most recent one. However, I can do it. I think I said no for one of them, but I can do it.
Well, you can't, but,
Go ahead and
don't-
take
I
a look,
mean, we-
pass that sheet around one more time, perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
I say
I
no
have it.
for one, but I can't remember which one it was.
But
It might have been
otherwise,
July.
we're looking at a similar meeting a month from now on June 24th, where that would be the primary agenda item, or one of the primary agenda items.
We'd have the TASER review, and then
Oh,
Well, you can decide if you want the TASER review as well,
I
but you
think we could,
definitely
I
would
think we can
have.
handle that and the
I can do
rescheduled
July 9th if I have to.
appeal hearing, because we're not going to hear the appeal. It's a question of whether or not we're going to
Correct,
hear the appeal.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what you want to finish as soon as you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I mean, I was not aware that we needed the attorney to be here for the closed session. I thought we could discuss it without him. We have his memo. That's
we
essentially
can't
what
do
he'll
He
be saying.
reiterated that to me.
Can't discuss it
Yeah.
at all right now
I'm-
without him?
So is the city
The-
attorney?
Can't-
The issues that were behind closed doors, you cannot.
We can't discuss it in an
You
open.
can't do that in a closed session right now.
Yeah.
If there's something that you want to discuss that isn't private to the community,
Yeah.
you can discuss that right now.
Right.
As well as deciding which date you want to meet.
yeah, when we have an appeal or a complaint, that's done in closed session, not in front of the public, until we've made a decision. And then that becomes public.
The vote is taken in public. In the past, we've
understand.
given some comments on what was discussed, but without revealing any information that might identify anyone involved. But I guess,
I guess
so
you don't-
if we can't discuss it this evening, I guess I would just ask everyone to just read the memo that was provided by the city attorney, read the ordinance, and then if everyone will be here on the 24th, I think that will probably be the date to take a vote on whether or not to hear the appeal or not, I think.
Okay, so you're not proposing that we go into exec session on the 24th, but simply have a public
No, I am.
vote? Okay.
Do we know if the
I mean-
city attorney is available on June 24th?
He is.
Okay.
Is,
That-
is it necessary to have another session to discuss it? Because, if it is, fine. But if it isn't, then, I feel like we could either, if we're prepared to vote on it, we could vote on it
Yeah,
now. Or we could vote on it on, June 24th.
Definitely,
without a
I think
closed
at the
session.
last one, I was probably a bit of the missing link because I had not read all of the documents, but I now have and feel ready to vote.
I think, I'd be hesitant in doing the vote tonight because, one, it's not on the agenda. Two,
Well, that's important. That's good.
Peggy hasn't had an opportunity to give her input in a closed session. And if Katrina were to be here, I would like to give her that opportunity as well.
A brief closed session if we need to.
On the 20th, so that would be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be as long as the last one, I guess.
And that's the plan, is to have the closed session.
And the vote
and-
that
and
evening,
it's-
yeah.
And then after that, you can still do the TASER review if you like.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate, although I had to miss that meeting, and if you were all there and had plenty of time, were ready to vote, clearly that is fine, because there have been meetings you've missed, and we've taken votes. But the more important thing is that we didn't let the public know we'd be voting on it
Yeah.
tonight, so that, it has to indicate that in the agenda. So,
And in all likelihood, it would be an odd number of votes, which might be useful too, so. Not that I don't know how the vote is going to go, but
Yeah.
if it's an odd number, we'll have a decision, and we won't have a split vote, which I would like to avoid, so.
okay.
That's also useful. Okay. Any other questions about E2?
We'll take it up on June 24th.
So the plan will be to take up the executive session, closed session for any last questions. Peggy can provide her comments if she has comments or questions, and then we will plan to have the vote that evening. The city attorney will be available that evening for the executive session, and then the plan will be to have the vote in open session here in the council room, and then we'll take up the taser, which I think we'll have plenty of time for. So that, yeah, I think
So
that's,
we'll have it on the agenda, because my understanding from
Yeah.
our last meeting was, my expectation was that it would have been on the agenda to vote on it on this one. So I'm sort of surprised that it's not. So,
Reading it, and I was like, oh, I thought that we were gonna vote on that, but
Again.
No, and yeah, if
Because
that was-
my understanding was that there were unanswered questions at the last closed session that needed to be answered. And then we found out the city attorney was not available, and so it was simply to reschedule the next closed session, is what that item is about.
okay.
yeah, sorry if that was
Yeah, no, I think
unclear.
we should, as long as we notice it for the next time, because, this will drag for a while because I don't think there's been any action on any, at least in my part, I tried to get some answers on some of my unresolved questions, but have not gotten answered, so I don't expect that I will. And therefore, I'm not sure that I see a lot of, action on it, so I'm sort of like, okay, well then, we're gonna have to bite the bullet and make a decision at some point, so. Yeah, so I think if we get it on the agenda to vote next time, it'll keep it moving.
Yeah, the plan is to vote on it at the next meeting at June 24th. I agree that I don't want to draw this out. It's, it's concerning that it's open-ended anyway. So, and in the interest of both the department and the appellant, we want to resolve this as soon as possible. Again, it may be resolved sooner than, or it may take less time to resolve it depending on how the vote goes, but if not, we can get it scheduled and go from there. Okay. If there's no other questions about E2 or comments, then we'll move to E3. The new hearing schedule, there's a doodle poll that was sent out. I think to respond to it on the actual doodle, not the paper version, and then we can schedule the appeal hearings. These are for two different appeals, correct, Tom?
Two different appeals from the same appellant,
Right.
and could happen in one session, we believe.
But if you can put your names down there, I just know in the past, sometimes those online doodle polls behave weirdly. It was when I tried to fill it out. And if you know your calendar, and maybe you don't,
I
okay.
need to look at
It
it.
would just,
I just
So
didn't
that-
see the extra 2 dates, that's why I didn't fill them out.
No,
Yeah.
those were not on there till today.
those were just added.
But you can go back into the poll and resubmit?
Anybody can put in their information they already have on that piece of paper, or if they need to change something they've entered, they can go back to the poll and update, change it maybe from
Yeah.
yes to no, or yes to maybe,
Okay.
or no to maybe.
Essentially, the dates are throughout the summer for this. And those are all dates that the department is ready to have someone available, is that?
Yes, we know Carl and I will both be there, and before we publish one, we'll double check with the city attorney as well.
And have we communicated with the appellant about those dates, or,
We'll have to do that as well. That'd be this actual step as well.
gotcha, okay.
That's really just to get this board to be sure that you know what we're thinking about.
Okay, okay. So, yeah, again, go back and check your schedules with the new dates and fill that out, and then hopefully we can get that done and get that scheduled.
And again, feel free, if you need to say no to a date, that's why we gave you a dozen dates there. We want to make sure the
Yeah,
board is
there's a lot of
accommodated.
options. Okay, let's move on then to E4. So this is the annual report. I believe everyone has a copy of the latest report. Thank you to Jane for
Yes, thank you, Jane.
combining all of our comments, both in digital form and through our discussion at the last meeting. I think it was very productive. I think, I'm trying to find my copy of it. Jane, do you want to maybe just comment on where we're at?
So I think that I would say the one thing that feels very unresolved to me, and maybe we got this from Carla, but was the number of taser discharges and displays and stuff, and I should have asked her for it before she left. But is very minor. I think otherwise, I tried to incorporate the comments from our last meeting, and some of them were extremely clear-cut. And then some of them were a little bit more open-ended, like the general comment that we should make it more easy to understand about why 2020 was different. And so I added a section on how to read the report, which is in 1C. So I would say that that is something that I think in sort of considering how to kind of have that explanation of 2020 and also sort of an explanation of the recommendations in a little bit more context, because we talked about the buckets and how the CPRB has quite a history of, there's been a lot of recommendations. And so we discussed whether it would be productive to put the recommendations at the end. And so I added the recommendations at the end. So in Appendix 2, I actually tried to take all of the recommendations that I'm aware of the CPRB in recent history and just put them together. So there's the recommendations which are in this report, which I guess one thing that we discussed is adding who was responsible. So I try to put in brackets who was responsible, and then Tony gave me some policy for recommendations 1 and 2. And so those are summarized, the recommendations in this report are summarized in section 2, and then I included also the Barry Dunn report, which is relatively recent, and his recommendations on this board. And so I thought maybe to put that into the context, and then the resident petition from 2020. And then the CPRB took that resident petition and put it into buckets. So, put it into sort of 3 categories, which were things that the CPRB could just do, things that the city council could just do, and then things that would change the style of the board, from the structure. Yeah, so, and then I also put in, just for good measure, the 2011 community input that happened during the last reauthorization. So that is kind of like a chunky, but I think hopefully useful appendix.
Yeah.
I had a couple just small comments. I don't think I looked at the most recent, but under 1A, where we start with the July 2005 incident regarding Officer Rejort, do we want to link to something there, just as a way to, like a news article, or?
Yeah.
Because I did find one on the News Gazette, but I
Yeah.
thought it might be useful to
There's-
cite
I
so
think
that
I put it
it's,
in resources, but we need a footnote for it.
just so it's not a
Yeah.
blanket accusation that's not, especially something given the topic of the paragraph and
Yeah.
the issues, I thought it was
Well,
important.
and
we
there should be a
include-
News Gazette article
I-
for
yeah, no,
establishing the task force and stuff.
I'm sure it's there. I just thought, without it's just a naked accusation, and I know there's support for it, but I just thought it should be in there. The other comment I had was, I know we've said buckets for these concerns, but do we want to use a different word in the report?
Oh,
I think
sure. Yeah,
categories
whereas-
sounds pretty good. Buckets
Yeah.
sounds,
No, I wasn't sure if buckets was like an official.
no,
term.
it's definitely not.
Where is buckets?
Nickname last time.
Yeah, it's on page 8 of the
Gotcha.
mark.
First mention of it was on 7 at the very end.
Oh, it might be other places. You might be right.
Oh, yeah, that looks right. Thank you.
But anyway, I think
Yeah,
maybe
categories.
categories might sound more fitting and deserving of this annual report. I think, that was the other question, sorry. Jane, figure 2 is I was confused about
Figure
figure
two.
2, sorry, page 14. Are those numbers the, like, randomized police officers, or the, I was confused as to what the chart was showing
Oh,
us.
figure 2, this is what we discussed, which I think is a great idea, but now we're confused by it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't my great idea, but I think it's excellent. This is the number of complaints that the officers have received. And then the number, on the x-axis,
Mm-hmm.
is like, if you received 1 complaint, then you're counted in the column 1. If
Okay.
you receive 2 complaints, you're counted in the column 2. And then the number of officers receiving that number of complaints. So I think it is much better, but also it maybe is confused. I'm probably not labeling it well.
Yeah, I think maybe another label to let you know what that number right there is could be helpful.
So if I'm reading this right, there was 1 officer that received 27 complaints?
No, 27 officers received 1 complaint.
No, but the,
Oh,
The
one
other-
officer received 27 complaints in 2020.
in 2020, right? Okay.
Frankly, I mean, blue is for 2020 to 2025, but you can see that there are no oranges. So they received 27 complaints,
Right.
all in the same year.
Right, no, I like how you've
officer.
broken out the 2
It's
colors.
13 on our copy.
Oh, sorry, it's
has another
13.
Yeah. Figure 2, though, yeah. Figure 2. Number of complaints by officer.
Okay, that makes,
Yes, I mean, which I think this was a really good way to do it, but then, it's also, I meant, probably maybe not labeling
No, it
the
makes-
axes very well.
it makes sense.
Now that I'm
I-
on the right page, I like it a lot more.
Yeah.
Because we had that donut and it was really hard to read because
Right.
there were
Yeah.
27 people with 1 complaint. So
Yeah.
there were a million ones.
Right. Okay. I thought those might have been the randomized,
No, so now we
Officer.
don't have any of the,
anonymized information.
yeah, I don't know that we did before, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I think that looks fine now that
Yeah.
you explained it, because I was just not, it just wasn't, I think it was late when I was looking at that. The only, I think, recommendation 3, I was just thinking about this as to, especially maybe the first couple
The page
sentences.
before the chart.
Oh, yes, yeah, it's right, it's on page 12 of the printed out copy. I don't know if the first 2 sentences are, I don't know how much of a recommendation that, like, I don't, are we,
Important items are not forgotten track of what's called.
like, using, like, better time management, like, I'm just wondering if that's something we need to put in to, like, tell the department, like, you guys need to use your time better, or more time management skills. It sounds maybe like we're talking
Yeah,
down
and
to
we
them,
could-
or, I don't know.
Yeah, we could definitely, I think that the problem was that there were a fair amount of complaints which were related to like, well, I got in a car crash and I needed the report for my insurance and I didn't get it.
Okay,
And then they didn't have the stuff that they needed to do it, and now I'm kind of messed, I'm in a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone had forgotten to do some like basic, like boring paperwork thing. And so
Okay.
that was what I was kind of trying to respond to, especially because there were quite a lot of, but I think that in the, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs up, I think I also have just summarized that that was in fact the case, that residents commonly requested more attention to administrative to-dos, such as missing traffic accident reports and follow-up.
Okay.
Then, so I think we could happily get rid of the recommendation, given that, we've noted that it is a pattern.
Yeah.
And it's also something that I think with some of the more dramatic things that we talk about in this board,
yeah,
that, people are legitimately like, hey, it's like understandable to make a mistake, but, it came up a few times, and so, I think that this is what this is for. So I didn't want it to get lost, but I agree, it's not a terribly important recommendation.
Right.
again, I mean, I'm happy to keep it, I just thought it sounded,
Yeah, a little bit patronizing.
Yeah.
Because really, we want the behavior to change. We don't, I mean, they may well be getting all kinds of time management. I mean, it sounds like they get a lot of training. But if the behavior that we want isn't happening, we just need to if what you found was that
Yeah, I was thinking it's almost
complainants
like,
were getting followed up on in a timely manner.
yeah,
I mean, not get better time management if it doesn't result in.
true.
the
Yeah, I don't know
behavior.
what the solution is, or if it's like there should be
Yeah.
like a, you know, a better system for tracking it or something to make it
Yeah.
easier. Because I'm sure that it's like, well, you go to the car accident and then someone else calls and you're off to the next thing, and then
Uh-huh.
it's like you,
I just
you know,
wonder, I
just
wonder
forget.
if, and I think, I'm sorry if I hallucinated that I read this versus actually reading this, but isn't it true that the way it's handled is typically that each officer is maybe like responsible for taking each call to completion? And so maybe if that completion step isn't happening, it could be useful if there was someone that did just the paperwork. I don't know if that's possible, like rather, like if, you know, officers are constantly, I don't know if it's constant or not, but like not finishing the completion step, then what if like there was one person that was responsible for, say, making sure that the people who called were reached out, back out to, and that was one person's job versus each officer takes on a little bit of the job. That way there's somebody that's accountable.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to get in the business of micromanaging how they conduct their business, because maybe they do that, and besides, what do we even know how they do
For
it?
sure.
You know what I
We
mean?
don't
It
know,
could be
yeah.
insulting.
We
But I
don't know.
thought, I was trying to find it here, but I thought there was another place where you actually do point out that loops weren't closed, that there wasn't
Yes.
closure.
I think
on
3
the-
paragraphs above it just
Yeah.
sort of describes what kind of complaints we felt like fell into the category of loops were not closed.
Yeah.
So I'm also like, there's a lot of recommendations, you know, if we don't need it or we don't need the first sentence of that. I think that that actually the more critical one is that, you know, sometimes there were times when somebody called for help, and in certain circumstances, you know, I felt like I saw, and, you know, I'm interested in y'all's feedback on, you know, what you see as patterns too, because, you know, I've just read them all at once too, which, you know, you've been reading them for years. But I would say, like, you know, sometimes people will call and they're like, for whatever reason, the officer gets distracted maybe by the person who was causing the problem. And they interact with the person causing the problem, but they don't actually loop back around to the person who called. And so then the person who called doesn't know that they did the good work that they did. Or they just come and they can't reach the person. And, you know, I think sometimes that's just probably gonna happen because,
Yeah.
like, they don't have good information from 911. But, like, I think, you know, if the 911 person could then call back and say, hey, the officer came out, but they couldn't find you for whatever reason, you know, maybe they could try to work with METCAD to close that loop. And then the other piece that I think I wanted to, and maybe I'm trying to put a lot of things in this one bucket of recommendation 3,
Category.
yeah, category. But is that sometimes somebody calls because they say, hey, you know, my partner is being violent. And then the police come and they say, you know, they both get arrested. Or, you know, nobody gets arrested, but the person who called gets a ticket for being loud or something. And, you know, and then potentially that's, you know, disincentivizing them to call for help in the future because they're facing, you know, some sort of consequence. And then also, you know, they're upset and they make a complaint. And I think that it's probably hard to know who's at fault, you know, and it's also hard when the officers don't necessarily, I mean, they can't use a he said, she said as probable cause to, you know, make necessarily an intervention. But I think that was something that, you know, I was trying to address.
Well, I guess my feeling is, since we've never had recommendations, and I think it's a great idea that we're having recommendations. I have just 2 I want to amend, which I've talked to you about, but the others you haven't heard. But it is constructive criticism, which is very good, but I would vote for fewer than more. So if there are things that are like, oh, we kind of touched on it somewhere else, and this sort of looks like we're trying to tell them how to run their training, I would vote for getting rid of it. I think it's lower priority because it's been mentioned elsewhere, and I worry that not having had recommendations before and then coming up with 15 recommendations, some that are really significant and some that are more minor. For me, I would rather keep the significant ones, since this is our first time. I'm afraid it'll be an overwhelming kind of input, and we might not get movement when I would prefer to get movement on the things that really matter, I mean, our top priority. But anyway, that's
Yeah,
my
and-
opinion. We are five, so.
No, do you guys have an opinion on amending recommendation 3? Either, take it all out, or take out the first sentence about time management, or, other?
I also I agree with you, and I want to mention too that like I think the reason why I think that this should be maybe removed is because I think it's a little bit vague.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it talks about vague things about character and work ethic, and it doesn't really describe how a problem is solved. And and so for that reason, yeah, I think that it's not very helpful.
The examples are almost better than the
Yes,
recommendation.
that's exactly right. Just the fact that we've had so many concerns about this, I think does better than us recommending something vague, and that doesn't really help.
Cool, so should we drop recommendation 3?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And one idea would be to, in addition to the recommendations that you're trying to organize for the police department and that feedback, is recommendations for yourselves of what you want to continue to monitor from one annual report to the next. If you see something that seems a little vague right now, just say, to tell yourselves, keep your eyes on this, because is there a trend that might be developing? Or if not, is it going to be, are they, because we've had so much turnover in the leadership over the years that they may be emphasizing different things from one year to the next.
Yeah, an excellent point. I do hope when we finish this, I've mentioned this to you, Jane, is that we will come up with a process that we all understand to do just that, so that we don't miss opportunities to identify trends and concerns, and we're not all doing it,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
true, we got 2026, we're like almost halfway through
I
the
know,
year.
I
so-
know. So I hope that'll be part of the discussion when we finalize this,
Yes.
sort of like, okay, how will
Yes.
we?
No, this is good.
Is it possible maybe, or just in describing or discussing that we have 15 recommendations, would reorganizing them be a good idea? Like, because they're separated based on different sections, and I wonder if we labeled,
Well, and they're also now in the back, because
Yeah.
we've been discussing whether we wanted to keep them separate or,
Although they appear
I think
throughout,
that
too.
they-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do think that they're much easier to read in context than in isolation.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it doesn't, I was just wondering if we were worried about the number and that it seems so,
What about, so we have the appendix, and we're hoping they'll read all the way through this, but what if we also, besides just
summary.
listing them numerically, if after they're listed numerically, then we have UPD, recommendations for UPD, and just list theirs by number, recommendations for OHRE, just.
Oh,
what if,
So each
Yeah.
entity could basically pull out this page and say,
Yeah.
here's what I have to do. Here's what was recommended for me to do, or my entity to do.
I think maybe along with that, just a one-pager executive summary too, because it is a long report, and that may be daunting or just time-consuming maybe something like that, which would include maybe a breakdown of those things, and maybe just some sort
Yeah.
of summary of what we found. I think that could be done. Or maybe that could be, I could put that in the chair message, that could just be
My only
there, I
thing
don't know.
about that is that we've compiled a report that encompasses 5 years. I think that while I understand what you're saying, I would hope that the understanding is that this is a very long report because it covers a lot of years. There's a lot of work put into it. I'm gonna sit down and read this. You know what I mean? So like,
I'm thinking more of like just the casual resident who stumbles on this,
oh,
and,
I see what you mean.
you know, they click on the PDF and it's 50 pages, and they're like, oh
What
no,
if,
what
what
did I
if
do?
what if,
Oh, there's an executive summary, you know, and then
what if
if
by
they
the
want to dig through, they
recommendations,
can.
it was like listed to the page number in the back? That way, if someone wanted to start with, here are the recommendations, and then, oh, that's really interesting, let me read what data is behind that recommendation.
I think that would be really helpful, more than pulling out, I mean, I know what you're saying, Renee, that they appear to be directed to certain groups, but really they're, in my view, they're all for the UPD because it all involves them in some ways. It's just that city council would have to change an ordinance, but the ordinance is about their behavior. So I would like UPD to see all of them. I mean, actually, I'd like everybody to see, all the entities to see all of them, but I think Jane was just trying to indicate who has to take action. But I think having the page numbers would be good, because if a recommendation really jumps out at someone, sort of what is the context for that? They can go back and read that section.
Yeah, that's kind of, because I think that, I agree that, certain people, maybe their first read, but they're a civilian, or maybe it's their second read and they're just trying to hit the footnotes. Like, they might want to look through, like, have a place to look and say, oh, this is like the long and short of it, and if I want to go look over here, I can. And I think really we're here for recommendations and then showing why we recommend that.
Yeah, and I think having it be a key part of your message, I think would be excellent. Because, I mean, that's, most executive summaries sort of have like, this is what here's the findings, kind of, and then you read all the background to it. Because to me, I think this is the most important part, Jane. I'm glad you suggested having recommendations, because to me, that's the heart of the report.
Absolutely.
Everything else is sort of like background, essential,
Yeah.
but
And I
this
think
is-
if this is the only page that they read, then that's the page that we're here to deliver. And then being able to skip to the data to support it is nice.
Right.
I wonder if which is something that I sort of started doing and might be useful, is to give each recommendation, instead of recommendation 1, that there'd be a header, like, use care with, searches, or just searches, or
Oh, a heading for the-
de-escalation, like, so that they each sort of had a name. And then they could have the page number,
Yeah,
the
I think
entity
so.
that's responsible. So maybe we'll give them a little bit more of a, like, context
A little flavor, yeah.
header. I wonder too, just speaking of Tony's message from the chair, this report is really, technically, I think is for the mayor and the city council. So I wonder, I mean, this was just the template that I got, but it has message from the mayor. But in a way, this report is for the mayor. So I wonder, in a way, if partially we should just not bother Deshaun to write us a message to put on the report, which is for him to read. So I wonder if we could maybe skip that part.
I think we could get rid of that,
Okay.
yeah.
Because then he'd have to read the report in order to give us the message, in order for us to give him the report.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as far as just getting this done,
Yeah, before we move on to the process, there was just 2 recommendations,
Oh,
since
sorry.
I had to
Yes,
miss
yes,
that
and-
meeting, that I wanted just to bring to people's attention to see if others share my concern. One is recommendation 7. I'll let you look at that real quickly.
Which is my page 17.
Yeah. And it's where the suggestion that we give up time limits on evaluating cases based on the merits of the facts. Currently, we have a 30-day time limit, I believe, or is it 45 days?
45 days.
45.
And then with an additional, like, hard limit at 1 year. If they
Right.
were physically unable to file.
Okay. My feeling is that having a statute of limitations makes sense. I mean, to have things that kind of go on indefinitely does not. I think it's hard to kind of track. I think it makes it really difficult to kind of, follow through. And so I looked up NACOL, which is the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, sort of what their recommendation was. And their recommendation was that there be a statute of limitations for just those reasons. It's hard for departments to pull up evidence. It's hard for people to remember things if you make it open-ended. They suggested a year, as we have. I looked at Champaign's and U of I, and Champaign has a 45-day, and, no, I'm sorry, Champaign has a 60-day, and U of I has a 30-day. So I guess my feeling is, I think, to go from having a time limit to having no time limits, I think is not reasonable in my view. And I would suggest that we increase the time to a year, so that it's hard and fast, not in some cases, or 45 days as, that wouldn't include Champaign, increase it to 60 days as Champaign has. I guess I'm looking at recommendations that would really make a difference in public safety and police community relations, and also ones that are reasonable in my view, that are reasonable to implement and don't look like we're trying to.
I believe that I was actually the one that either brought this up or supported this, and I will tell you why, and I will say that I'm new to this board and I don't fully understand the process, but the reason why I supported it or brought it up was because that what we find is that oftentimes people who are victims of crime, whether that crime is by a civilian or it's by the police department, there is a certain level of time that it takes for that person to unpack the feelings that they have, like it's a trauma response. So you might have a victim or a survivor of a crime that will not feel comfortable to talk about the crime for 45 days or a year because they have to go through therapy. And so that was the only reason why. Now, obviously, for that person, there's other avenues that they can go through that don't have anything to do with this board. And so perhaps it's not important. But that was the reason why I suggested or supported it, is because, I just think that trauma and abuse is a complex thing. And obviously, if you're having someone that is just upset about being yelled at a traffic stop or something, that's one thing. But if you have someone that's talking about being raped in her home, for example, those things might have different times that it takes for that person to feel comfortable talking about it.
No, I appreciate hearing that. Would changing it to a year, from 45 days to a year, feel better to you, or do you think it's important that it have no limit to filing?
I think it's important that it have no limit. However, it's not a hill that I will die on. I think that, there are a lot of recommendations. This is a lengthy report. Do I think that they're going to take that advice? Probably not. Maybe there's a better time to talk about it. But I just think that time limits on these things in general just kind of, they make a victim more of a victim than anything, because now you have to hurry up and talk about it, or now you have to hurry up and otherwise you're like, oh, well, my time limit's over. I can never talk about it now,
Yeah.
so.
Well, thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
I mean, do others have strong feelings or feelings?
I would, I like what you had to say, Peggy. I mean, I think leaving it without a statute of limitations would be good in some respects, but I would be concerned about just not having the evidence to review. I mean, the reports will be there, but I'm more concerned about video. Those things don't get retained that long. And so while, Melissa, I understand your point of view from the victim's point of view, encouraging them to come forward with a time limit may be useful, because it may present, there may be better evidence for us to review if we don't leave it open-ended, because I don't know how long they keep, body cam video and that kind of thing, because I don't think
I think
it's,
it's the 45
it's-
days.
yeah,
I think
it's-
that's where it comes from.
yeah,
But I
it's
guess
not
that
terribly
where
long.
I'm coming from is just, well, why wouldn't we just take the case, and either there's no evidence and we'll say, oh, sorry, there's no evidence.
We should still hear
Or
them.
if in this case, that is the example, the woman says, hey, look here, I have this video of literally this police officer saying this thing. And I don't know if that's true or not. Somebody's maybe said it on this video. And, who knows if there's actual evidence to show that the police officer said the rude thing or not. But why wouldn't they review it? There's no harm in it. It would be so easy. If there is literally a video, if it's a year later and someone says, well, there's now no evidence, sorry, we have nothing to go on, then that's a preponderance of the facts. Because I tend to agree, Melissa, with what you're saying. I think that a lot of times when someone's been through this, it's really hard to go through this next bureaucratic process that's kind of like re-traumatizing.
It's not going
that-
to happen in 45 days.
Yeah, it's just, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of, it's actually a lot of sort of work to do when you're maybe dealing with consequences of this thing that happened. I think that's another reason that the one that I do think is incredibly important is recommendation 6, which is that it should not have to be the person who underwent the traumatic thing who is feeling vulnerable who has to submit this recommendation. And I probably feel more strongly about 6 than 7, because I think that a lot of times it's, it should be able to be the bystander. It should be able to be, we see city council people submitting complaints, not necessarily because it involves them, but because they're hearing about it from constituents, and they want there to be a process. So I think that if people could do that for other people, it's less important sometimes about the time constraints, but I think it's always important because people aren't necessarily going to talk to anyone about it for a while. And if we have the evidence, I mean, I think certainly if we don't have the evidence, what can we do?
It pairs well with the auto appeal recommendations too, that if someone has filed their complaint, they've mustered enough strength to do that, they've, within the time limit, and then they would know, or at least be made aware that, like, you're gonna submit this complaint, there's gonna be some decision, and then it's gonna be automatically reviewed by this board. You do not have to participate. That is not necessarily going to, make your issue moot, because the board will review it. So, I mean, I guess there's a couple of recommendations that kind of
That kind of try to
string
address
together.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
That it's, the onus shouldn't be on the complainant. Again, this is a review of the department, not a review of the complainant.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
I think is
But I think
stated
there
in
is a
there.
big leap between 45, a month and a half,
Oh, yeah.
and 12 months. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
but anyway, we didn't get a chance to ask what you thought, Renee.
I mean,
you want-
oh,
yeah,
sorry.
she
I
didn't
don't
get a
have
chance.
I don't have anything else to add, yeah.
I can see, I can literally see both sides of it. I do think that recommendation 6 is more important, especially if there were witnesses or there was somebody that it was shared with, that they are able to make the complaint as well, or because sometimes it doesn't have to be a firsthand account. There's so much video, and if we as citizens and we have the police asking for, oh, do you have door cam footage? Do you have any businesses with video footage? And we're using that, why can't we use other video footage that we personally have? And there's so many ways to tell if it's been altered and all of that, so I think that should still be available for use. As far as the timing, I also see the other side of it, where you could have somebody who used to get in a lot of trouble all of a sudden and have a lot of complaints with the police, and all of a sudden they've retired and they have free time on their hand, and they just decided that this is going to be their business, is bugging the Urbana police and filing appeal after appeal for the next 25 years of their retirement. So that's my other thought is, are we going to have people coming out of the woodwork like that are like, this is it, this is my calling now? So I think to have an initial statute of limitations, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a good thing. I think it might be necessary, but I'm wondering if we have, especially when it comes to 6, if there's some kind of victim advocacy where the advocates on behalf of the victim can file that, can come forward in some way to start the process before timelines. And I wish there were a way to put a caveat on it saying, for this, we're going to, and the other thing, like I'm reading the one about the woman who saw the video after the fact, after the 45 days, but still have filed the appeal within 45 days of viewing it. How often when new evidence is introduced that's admissible, right? In court, most of the time that new evidence is allowed. So all of a sudden we got new evidence for this case. Why couldn't that be allowed? So I wish there was some kind of caveat that we could put on it saying, we're going to stick with the 45 days and the 1 year, but if these things happen. I don't know how to define those things, and I think it might be too cumbersome for this report, but it is something that I think we should look into further as a board and maybe explore more. So.
Well, I mean, it sounds like everyone's saying number 6 really takes precedent over this. I mean, is this an example of putting in everything that we think would be kind of nice to have, but the really important things are here? I mean, again, not to repeat myself, but I think if there's 5 or 6 or 7 recommendations that boy, it would really move the needle. We want our focus on this and, you know, make this be part of our discussions with the, I say, let's go with those. And the things that would be nice, but like in this case, no one has unlimited time. NACOL doesn't recommend it. I hate to throw in things that feel like they're coming out of left field. I'm afraid it will dilute the importance of the other things, or will make us look like our recommendations aren't grounded in anything. If we're not saying, well, NACOL or Champaign or UVI or whatever we want to say, but this is just, no, we think this is just a good idea.
Yeah.
Do we still want to keep it in at all? Or is it in that category of, well, maybe it's not one of those?
It seems to me like if I think that what number 6 would do if it's accepted, kind of like sort of addresses the heart of what I mean, at least feel like number 7. So like, for example, if a victim were to be able to submit a complaint and then that complaint would be dealt with within the police department, and that person would not have to be involved 100% in every step of the way of the process, then that would address what I'm at least saying about, like, you know, trauma and dealing with trauma in you know, a timeline where they say that you should, you know what I'm saying?
It might be easier to file the complaint if
Yeah.
you knew.
Yeah,
You
that
didn't
you
have to
wouldn't
be
have to
in-
go sit down and look at the person and,
Right.
you know, all of that.
What about, do you think, so if we just got rid of recommendation 7, do you think the preceding paragraph still makes sense? And would we want to consider, if not, would we want to consider recommendation 7, put ourselves, CPRB, as the responsible parties, and say CPRB should study best practices for time limits in NACOL and, you know, especially when new evidence is presented or something like that?
I like the idea of giving us the task too. Like, we recognize that UPD needs to do all this stuff and the city council needs to do all this stuff, but we as a board also need to look at these things. So I like
This might be a
giving,
good excuse to give us one.
yeah, so maybe we reword recommendation 7 to be CPRB needs to look into.
And like, we don't know what the
Yeah.
right answer is, but we want to study whether this is or isn't a problem and what the best practice is.
And hope to
Yeah.
present it in future reports or make a recommendation in future reports.
I'm confused, I'm sorry.
Say that, yeah.
So-
I'm confused about what is being.
So instead of making this the city council, we would put this on the CPRB and we'd make the recommendation that we research and look into best practices when it comes to time limits for filing.
And maybe we would say as, you know, is to produce a trauma-informed process too, you know, that, because I think that Melissa, you bring up like an extremely important point here that I think, you know, we could do well to say explicitly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then
sound
just
okay to you, Tony?
the other one I wanted to
Yeah,
mention.
no, I'm just listening. I was just, I mean, I think one of the points of recommendation 7 is addressing, you know, not investigating the complaints, which, I mean, I guess a lot of the report, I think, or at least from my reading of it, is that, you know, there should be more investigation and more review of the investigations, and we want to make that happen or occur more often. I think, you know, if talking about the time limitation, I think if we address maybe the other issues, that we won't be hitting this 45-day wall because people will be submitting without concern about their having to participate as much as they do now, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe and maybe that can be something that can be put in somewhere else, that like, we don't want to take the onerous off of the department to continue to accept complaints and actually investigate them and not look for ways to not do that because, you know, it's been over 45 days or the initial complaint has been non-responsive because they moved addresses, which is, you know, maybe because they're unhoused or because they are scared or, yeah, they don't want to be involved and, you know, all of those things like that. Again, the focus shouldn't be on, well, we couldn't do anything because we got this complaint and now they're gone. Again, the issue is the department. Or that's the complaint. The complaint is them, not the complainant.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
removing, I mean, if we remove it, maybe, or I mean, I could see, we could put this on us and say, we'll continue to look at best practices for a timeline or, and I, that will give us something to do, but also it will, I think if we address if the other things are addressed, I don't know if the time limit's gonna be a problem. I think
Yeah.
that might kind of fade.
Yeah,
But again,
yeah.
We can make the one recommendation, and then obviously if we're doing these reports every year, then we can just keep an eye on it, and if it keeps coming up, then maybe at that point, we can say we should extend this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, looking to maybe the next report, I could see a number of these recommendations still remaining on there, and that might be, that might reinforce them
right,
as well.
yeah.
I mean, some of them might fade off because we don't have as much data to look through, but I think some of the structural issues are still gonna be there.
Well, right, 'cause the next report's only gonna be 6 months or
Yeah.
8 months from now,
Yeah, I
so
don't
we don't wanna look like,
expect
yeah.
it all to be
Yeah.
changed.
I sort of anticipate certain structural issues already coming up this year, so.
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
But
that are
this
not
helps.
yet in here. Would you, do we want to move forward with the idea that we're going to put it on us and make sure that the general sense that I think is, at least the theme that came out for me is like, let's try to make this process not feel like something that is to be avoided, but hopefully as
Yeah.
something that is positive. And hopefully that theme will come across.
Yeah, it should be supporting the community.
Yeah, and that might
And
be good for
hopefully
your letter,
supporting the
too,
police
that we tried to look at it
department,
with, from that lens, how to
Right. Yeah, that
ensure that all
it's-
complaints are followed up on in a timely manner, and
Yeah.
that we are
Yeah.
I mean,
coming up with obstacles.
The
to-
ordinance goes at length to state that, this board does not get to sanction or fine or impose any sort of reprimand to the department in an individual capacity. It's meant to give comment and assist in a better working relationship with the city. So let's stop acting like this process is punitive in any sort of sense. It's constructive criticism, it's feedback, and, it's not trying to be, it's not trying to point the finger and shift all blames to the department, but like, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is how we can improve things. If you want more feedback, you need to make it easier to accept it, I guess. So, I don't know.
Well, that kind of just leads
More
into.
carrots, less sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, start with the assumption that we both want the same thing and
Right.
figure out. And my just last comment was about recommendation 13, where it talks about really kind of changing us from an appeal-only process to allowing more review and allowing complainants to indicate how they would like the process to happen. And my response to that is, I wasn't part of the development of the CPRB in 2007, but through training and other things, I've learned that we intentionally adopted a review-focused model, which has much more limited authority and independence than the other two kind of main models, which is an investigation-focused and then a auditor-monitor-focused model. And we adopted that, I think, well, the other models require more staffing, more budget, and more specialized skills. Now, many places have hybrid models, but they lean toward one of those three. And my understanding, we lean toward the one that required the least amount of budget and staffing and least amount of specificity on the volunteers, which I think has some benefit. So I guess following up on what I was saying is, instead of asking for something that I think I think we don't appreciate what it would mean to change us into an investigation model or an auditor model. I think we're doing just barely a good enough job on what we're asked to do right now. And I think, be careful what you ask for. I think it makes us sound like we don't really appreciate what that means. So I would oppose asking us to take on more of investigation role or auditor role, because I don't think that's reasonable, given budget and other limitations. But I do think we are missing many opportunities to use the information we do have, using it more effectively. And I think Jane brought that to our attention by recording all the complaints, reviewing all of the information we do get besides just appeals, and identifying trends, omissions, missed opportunities, and questions about the UPD process throughout. We've done very little of that until right now. We're doing it a little bit now, but I think that could be a more regular part of what we do. When Carla sends us something new in the portal, we all monitor that, and regularly we say, what are some trends we're seeing? What are some questions we have? And maybe that becomes one of the listening sessions we have with the UPD, like, I'm seeing many of the things that you saw right there. How can we tighten that loop up a little bit better? So I feel like we have a lot of information that we aren't taking advantage of, and I'd rather see us put our efforts into doing what we're now supposed to be doing and are authorized to do, instead of saying, we really want to have more authority, we really want to have more opportunities to investigate and monitor, because I think the little bit I've read other places that do that, it's a far bigger operation than we are able to do. Certainly as we are now, but I can't see Urbana being able to do that in any. So in the area of like asking for something that seems like we don't know what we're talking about, I'd rather make our recommendations be really succinct, really focused on the things, making sure that people are being able to use their complaint rights freely and feel like they're being listened to, and that we're making some progress on improving police community relations, instead of saying, we want to open up the world and just give us lots more authority. To me, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, I guess my intention was not to give us more authority, but basically just to do something kind of similar to what we do with the tasers, with the complaints, so that people do feel heard. Because otherwise, it just they don't really go anywhere.
Right. What you mean with the tasers, meaning that there's a public meeting where people can hear?
Well, yeah, it's a public meeting, and honestly, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea that we show the redacted videos, because I think it's labor intensive, and I think it's kind of, I don't know, it feels a little bit re-traumatizing and potentially, it's not very anonymous. So I guess truly I would be skip that part, but just have the process where we say, hey, we received a complaint wherein the police report says this, and the person says this, in an anonymous fashion, and then the police department would, if they wanted to present their evidence about their investigation, they could say something about it. If the person who complained wanted to come, I think they could come or they could not come. And then we would just say what it was that we thought about it.
Yeah, I don't think that we should automatically appeal every one, if that's.
Well, but I think what Jane is saying is that, if you look at the taser discharge, we're not holding it up because we didn't get interview from the complainant, or it didn't, the police did their investigation, they've presented what they had to say, they've given their report, and without even having the person who was subject to the tasing submit anything. So I think.
Yeah, I think that this one sort of feels like it sort of coincides with the previous number 6 that we were talking about, to me anyway. That each one is addressed on its own just because it was submitted, not because, not necessarily that the person who submitted it needs to be following up with it.
Well, and even historically, the number of complaints we've received would not, I don't think, would be that onerous to review them.
Average is what, 8 to 9?
Yeah.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from this recommendation was the complaint form should consider asking complainants clearly for their preferred solution or resolution. And I think that needs to be, that's an easy update on the complaint form that could be done. And then the city council should consider whether we should review. And I feel like with the number of complaints we have, and similar to the TASER, I don't think it would be a bad thing to review. It's not that we're,
Ask them if they would like that.
yeah, we're not necessarily giving a recommendation. We're not, it's not an actual official appeal, it's a review. So I think that there can be a distinction there on what, and then it doesn't involve us going to a more authoritarian or investigative model, so.
So just asking them in the initial complaint form, would you like, regardless of the outcome of the internal investigation by the police, would you like CPRB to review the finding? And then they could say yes or no. And then we already have their decision,
Yes,
essentially.
I think adding that question would be good.
That's,
Well, I thought Jane was suggesting that on the form, we ask people, how would you like to see this resolved, not would you like the CPRB to step in?
Yeah, but I think that both of those things can be true, because I think that, just like this officer was saying, that asking them what they would like to see happen doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's gonna happen. What it means is that it's giving people a space to say what they think. And maybe that there can be a disclaimer listed there as well, but, you know, it's just a place for people to express what they think.
Yeah, I could see that being beneficial. I mean, right now, we get all the complaints, and right now, we theoretically review all the complaints. So I guess what you're suggesting is that this would be in a public meeting that we would
Yes.
speak about.
Because right now, it's like we could, I mean, presumably, we could one-on-one talk to each other about it, but in no other way can we speak
can't
publicly
discuss it,
about
yeah.
them except in this annual report, in a general sense, which puts a lot on this report to, you know,
Yeah.
be the way that we are responding to folks and helping them feel heard.
I guess what I was hoping we could do is that as we review the 8 or 10 or 12 complaints once a quarter, we'd say, you know, I'm seeing this, we would have, it would be part of our agenda. I'm seeing this trend in the complaints I've seen. Officer, can you, it feels a little exposed to talk about a particular complaint and then to have someone come in, it feels like we're on the verge of violating kind of privacy, executive privilege kind of thing. I mean, someone may come in and listen quietly, but it's more likely that the person, you know, understandably would want to vent and want to be heard, and I think that takes a real specialized facilitator to say, well, no, we're really not getting into that right now. We're really just here to sort of think broadly about this situation. I mean, we'd be asked to be kind of a mediator, because, you know, you file a complaint, it's because something, you know, you feel strongly about something, and to invite that in a public meeting, it doesn't feel like a good thing for anybody involved, any party involved.
Well, I feel like they would have the opportunity to come, you know, if people wanted to, which I don't necessarily know that they would, but they would be able to give public input, which there are already guidance about, which I don't know if it's 5 minutes or whatever, so they could vent for 5 minutes, and then the police department would have an opportunity to give their, you know, investigation, and, you know, I think if, you know, if people, you know, there's certain guidelines for, you know, being in a meeting. So.
But also, these sessions are already open. So if you have a person that really has something to say, they could come do it right now.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying, if we're talking about their specific complaint and the details of the complaint, I mean,
Yeah.
that's very,
That is a good point, though. I didn't think about that. I don't know.
I mean, this would, you know, really change what we're authorized to do, because we wouldn't be an appeal only, we'd be reviewing every complaint and weighing in. And I'm not sure how I feel about that.
it's still it's still a review of the investigation. It's just, you know, I think it may be a better way to check, you know, a lot of the complaints that are being directed out or not investigating. It's putting a focus on it, and I think it's making the department answer to someone why they did something. Because if it's just like, well, it's outside of this 45-day, you know, even if that's within the ordinance, you know, we would be seeing this and be able to say, okay, well, maybe this is something that we make in a recommendation that we need to expand this beyond the date. Maybe it's, you know, maybe it's the time limit, maybe it's based on the first person account, because, you know, otherwise this complaint is something we should be taking into consideration or something like that, you know, like, and I think the report says that expressly, that, you know, we should be focused on not, on the no jurisdiction and not, that, outside of not founded, no jurisdiction is the main resolution
Yeah,
of the complaints. I mean, a lot of them are directed out for some reason.
yeah,
So, and that's concerning,
yeah, yeah, no, I agree.
so.
It's just, yeah, the best way to address that. Yeah, and maybe we don't have to say exactly how that happens, but,
I understand
I
your
don't-
concern, Peggy, that we're gonna, ask for too much that we can't, we're gonna bite off more than we can chew.
right, or I don't want it to appear to the complainant that we are in any way, by bringing it to light to a public meeting, that somehow that gives us, gives them some hope that we're going to change an outcome. I think it's more important that we weigh in and say, hey, officers, we've noticed the last 8 complaints, half of them been this, part of our recommendations got at this. Tell us what's the stumbling block, what do we need to do here? And we do that on a regular basis versus
I
on
think I see what
each
you're
complaint.
saying. I think I see what you're saying. So, because we already have access to all of the complaints.
Yeah,
So we could maybe we could do a little bit of both. Maybe for like the next year or so, we could say we're going to, like, every quarter, twice a year, whatever, we're gonna get better at compiling the data that we have, and then, using our opportunities to talk with the officers to express to them the trends that we've seen, but also not like misguide the people in thinking that we now are going to be able to do something. I think I understand what you're saying. I think what you're saying also does sort of do what we're saying.
yeah. If we,
I think it
Yeah.
does, because it's still, like, this is a public session. Anybody could come in, anybody could watch this, and they could see that, we're presenting all of the complaints that have happened and addressing it with the police department.
I guess I would like clarity on what we would be allowed to say about the complaints which have occurred, because I think it's not a whole lot.
right.
I
Okay,
think that
that's why
maybe we
I'm
could
not sure of
generally
that.
say what we
Yeah,
think
yeah.
the type of concern is. Like, I think we could say that there was a type of concern of excessive use of force and possible gender discrimination, although I don't know that I could say gender discrimination, because I don't know that it is a type of concern, because we haven't really determined, like, what it's, and maybe we just need more guidance on
And you could talk
what
about
we
what
are
the
allowed to
findings
talk
were.
about in this meeting, but I think it is not a lot.
We
Yeah.
don't want to dissuade people from filing complaint because they're going to be concerned that we're going to be airing out
Yeah.
their complaint to the point where someone watching may be able to figure out it was them,
Yeah.
and be concerned about that for whatever reason. I would be concerned about that.
Unless there's I don't know anything about what we are and are not allowed to talk about. I would assume that we're not allowed to mention names. That makes total sense to me. But I would assume that we're able to talk about the nature of the complaint as a batch, and maybe what the findings were. I don't know. But if we can talk about those things, then I think that that's kind of what we need to be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least we could maybe do it for a while and get our feet under us and get, a little bit of momentum, and then sort of use it as, look, we've been doing this, and now at the end, at our next report time, we think that we should do it this way instead. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think in the past, we've done appeals, and then we've had our vote, and there was, I think it was usually the chair would make a comment or two about, what may be described as like a recommendation. Now, I think the ordinance specifically says we're supposed to be communicating that to the chief. So, we could, again, get better at what we're already allowed to do.
Yeah.
As well.
I think we should do that. Just because. Okay, because I think that I would like some clarity about what we can and cannot talk about, because I think that's really important. Because if we can't have useful conversations with the chief or whoever is here talking about the complaints, then I think the point is sort of moot, doesn't matter, we can't talk about it. But if we are able to talk about it in ways that we're able to group them and talk about it and make recommendations based on the complaints that did not go to appeals, where the public can see that it's happening and see that their feedback is being received, then I think that's good. And then if that's not working, or if for some reason, like a little bit down the road, we're like, okay, we've been doing this, and we have a history of we've been doing this, then our recommendation for maybe this system that we're recommending here, we have more like legs under it. It's more, there's more weight to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. But it might be good to ask our legal counsel what we can. But it sounds like everyone feels good about the recommendations wording. I mean, because really, I guess what I was talking about was process. So sounds like no one wants to suggest any changes to the wording of 13, because everyone likes what it says.
Yeah.
That my things had to do with process, so.
I just want to make sure that we're able to talk about it in a productive way,
Yeah,
I guess.
right. And that doesn't talk about, it talks about allowing people to submit how they'd like to see it resolved on the complaint form. That's really what that says, so. And I'm okay with that.
I guess I was reviewing the ordinance today, and I hadn't remembered that we're supposed to quarterly provide an update to city council and the mayor about the complaints which have come in. And so, actually, I'm like, oh my God, we missed a quarter.
Yeah, and
you know?
that's what I was talking about. That
Yeah,
we
and so
should
I
do
think,
that.
I'm hearing you in terms of let's do better at that, and it would also keep us up to date with our report, because, but, I think presumably we could put this stuff, which is in this report, just do a mini report every quarter, and send it as an email update, but.
Or have like one of the, what I can't remember what we were calling it, but
Category?
when the officer was here and what is it, like basically talking to the officers.
Listening session like that?
Yeah, or something like that. Like if they're willing to do that, then that would be a great space for that, to do it in person rather than this piece of paper, which they may or may not read in entirety.
Right,
You know.
right, yeah.
Yeah, even that is kind of like a labor, because we only meet quarterly, so after
Yeah.
each meeting, we would have to produce sort of a summary. But I think we could probably do that through our portal, where ahead of time, we
Yeah.
hopefully have reviewed and are up to date on the complaints that have come in, and that we have reviewed and agreed on, the disposition of the type of complaint. So then it would be fairly easy to vote on, hey, is this update, which is sort of pre-generated, the update that we want to send.
Yeah, and we're only required to meet at least quarterly. This year, we're meeting more than, we added some months because we
Yeah,
realized
that's
it
true.
wasn't enough, so. Right, but
So
anyway.
just to maybe get back
Yes, oh,
to
yeah, sorry.
where we need to go with this report.
Mm-hmm.
So Jane, do you want us to submit our additional comments, and then do we want to have that as maybe the final version? And then I need to add a memo from the chair, and then I think it's done.
I added what you sent to me, but you can.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely
there's
amend
more
it.
I wanted to put in there. That
Yes,
was just kind
okay,
of a
great.
first.
Yeah, well, no, that would be great. I mean, I think another round.
Okay.
And, I think, I keep putting the pressure on us just to
No, that's.
No,
move
it's good. I'm
forward,
not-
and
I'm not
it's not
complaining
because I'm
about
trying
it.
to rush us, it's just because
No,
I think
no.
it will just sit otherwise. So I wonder if we want to aim to put it on the agenda next time, and whether we can or can't, we'll just try to vote on it. And, I'll do better at getting Tom, actually getting you a PDF, rather than, because
Yeah.
I do think, do folks find it useful to have the track changes in the document? Or
I've been
you're
reading it
familiar
kind of
enough
fresh,
with it,
yeah.
so, okay,
Yeah.
cool, then I would
Yeah.
just, at this point, I think there's not a lot that we've discussed
Yeah.
here. Send me anything else that comes to you, but then I'll just make version 4,
Okay.
and send it out as, like a,
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, so everyone get your proposed changes or comments to Jane. She will do a version 4. She'll circulate that out. And then the plan would be to have a finished report to vote on as being done at the June 24 meeting. And then I don't know if we want to talk about this, Peggy, you discussed the giving a heads up to the department.
Right, I mentioned this to Tony and
So,
actually
yeah,
to Jane,
I don't mean
too.
to spring it, but it's
no, no, no,
regarding
no.
the annual report.
No, since we're talking about all this.
And maybe we can have a final
Yeah.
discussion about that next time, but
Right.
go ahead, Peggy, sorry.
Since this is the first time we've had recommendations as part of the annual report, and the recommendations, as we've been talking about it, are intended to be constructive criticism, but they are, actually saying, these are things that we are unhappy about, the process, UPD. I thought it was real important to give the report, make sure the UPD has it before it goes out public, as a way of not looking like we're trying to blindside them, excuse me, and make them look bad in the public, but in the spirit of, we want to work on this together, so we want you to know what we're putting out there, and we welcome opportunities to talk about how we can implement these things, but this is part of an annual report, because we think, it'll give us some things to move ahead on.
That's a great idea.
But to do it before the city council gets it and before it goes up on the website and so forth.
That feels more like partnership versus we're accusing or,
Yes.
yep, I like partnership.
So we were thinking maybe a short window of time to where they're given, I don't know, a day or two, and then it's released to the council and we post it on our
Yeah.
page, and that would be it, as
Yeah.
far as a,
Yeah, and with the note that says, Chief Boone, this is the first time we've done recommendations. This is, it's our interest in, we'll be interested in hearing your thoughts about the recommendations.
Sure.
You're not changing them, but, as we work together to improve our processes.
I had planned to put that into the note from the chair, that this was
Good,
supposed to be constructive as opposed to,
yeah,
a
Right.
list of accusations and,
yeah, right.
that kind of thing. But it can be included in the email as well.
Yeah, as, right. I mean, shows that our intention is to
Okay.
work together and not trying to.
How would you logistically, so can we put some dates to this proposal?
So, I mean, like,
if-
if we
if we're voting on it.
if we vote on it on June 24th,
Mm-hmm.
as it's approved, ready to go,
At that point, it's public, right? Because if we're gonna vote on the thing, I would assume that it has to be in the packet in a very public way.
Yeah,
And
but
I guess
it would
it'll be-
it would be
yeah, I guess you're
apparent
right.
to the community at that point that we are,
well,
like,
it'll be
voting on
unapproved.
this
It'll
and-
be unapproved in the packet. It'll be a draft.
yes.
but
But
for all
would you
practical
then,
purposes.
therefore, would we want to, and I think, you could email it to Chief
Mm-hmm.
Boone, but I think to Melissa's point earlier, or I don't know if this is in the spirit of but I think, I would almost be like, should we set up a meeting for, what amount of us is not quorum with, like Cortez Gardner, who's our liaison, and say, hey, we were working on our report, and do you want to sit down and talk about it? And, really try to make more of a connection with him as he's new to the board, he's new to these complaints. I don't know how much of it he's been able to review.
I think that'd be
rather
awesome
than
if
like
they
sending
do
an
it.
email, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I could see either way, but I also think this report is actually by ordinance, is for the police, not for the police department, it's for the city council and the mayor. And so and maybe we're producing it in partnership with the police department, but then it just seems like, I'm not sure either way,
Yeah.
If
sending
I could
an
make a
email.
couple of points. First of all, to clarify, Lieutenant Gardner, there's been some question about who should be the liaison because of, and that's pretty new, because of some union question. And so that's why Deputy Chief Cervantes was here, or would be if we were doing a TASER review tonight. He would have gone back to that responsibility until the union question. And that was something that apparently the paperwork somebody found and said, we ought to review this and take some time with it. The other thing is, as I understand from Carla, that this is a annual review that I think goes to the mayor first, but let's clarify that for the June 24th meeting. And then you have some steps that you could use. If you wanted to make it, you could conceivably give it to the chief. And none of that has to be released to the public until you say it's ready to be released to the public, even if you vote on it. And then the other part of it is, assuming it goes to the city council, you could say, here's when we're voting on it, and it's not going to go to the city council agenda to their packet for maybe another 8-9 days, because they usually get a packet on Thursday or Friday for their Monday meeting, for instance. And depending on the type of meeting, it might be every other week before it would show up to their meetings. So you've got some leeway there based on what are your intentions, and you can decide that on June 24th.
But if we Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about timeline, because, and maybe I'm not understanding you, Tom. Can we vote on something without it being, in the, like, sort of
You're
public?
voting on, basically what you're asking this board to do is to approve your last draft. And then you can decide when you want to publish it and how you want to publish it in those different steps. So you have plenty of time. They would not necessarily see what you're voting on, just like we don't hand them a packet of the minutes until you've approved those minutes, and then it goes up, and it has to go up within, I think it's 30 days, that our office would have time to post it to that. And so it's really depending on what your intention is. I don't know that there's a specific regulation of how you have to publish your annual report. I think you get to decide which steps to do it, just that it is published.
I think, well, once we vote on it to be it finalized, I think we can delay posting on the website and send it to the police department in
I
advance
see.
and just say, hey, we're sending this to you. We plan to publish this publicly, 3 days from now. This is we're giving you advance notice in case there's concerns or something
Oh,
like
I
that.
see. See, I've been picturing it like if the city council is gonna vote on ordinance, blah, 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 then ordinance, blah, blah, blah is noticed, in its language.
Right, no, I see what you're saying.
With the agenda, is like, this is the agenda and here is the thing that we're gonna vote on. So I was assuming that this would have to be with that, and then it's like, well, then would we have to sort of pre-agree on a draft? And not, of course, I'm like, well, they could look at this draft and say, well, we're still changing it,
Yeah.
That's also seems fine to me, but.
Quite frequently, the public document simply has the title of what's going to be voted on, rather than the actual content.
Okay, well, that makes it somewhat easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get bogged down in the
Yeah.
logistics. I think we can give it to them in advance of publishing it, and I don't think we need to really.
Even when you come back on June 24th, the group could say, well, Jane, how about this one more idea? That
Yeah.
could be-
Yeah,
Right,
no,
right,
exactly.
right, right.
Well, and Tom, are you saying that, is there guidance in the ordinance about whether this report goes to the mayor before it goes to the council?
We'd have to double check on that with.
I actually cite that in mine. All it says is we provide an annual report to the mayor and city council,
Oh, okay.
and that there isn't anything else. I mean, there's other things we need to include, we've done that, but it doesn't give any, direct response, or any more details, so. As long as we send it to them, I mean, it doesn't even say we need to give it to the police department, so.
No, I'm sure it doesn't, but.
So I think, again, I mean, the concern was that we didn't want it to appear like we were blindsiding anybody. So in the interest of collaboration, Peggy proposed we give some advance notice to the department, and then we can also share it with the mayor and council at that same time, and then we'll just we could just say, we're gonna post this on the public website in 3 days or something like that.
And
Because they don't have to approve it, it's just
And when
has to be
somebody
done.
picks up the
Accept it.
CPRB annual report, they're going to go, look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen this in 6 years. Yeah, right, that's right.
No, I think they'll be happy. I mean, I feel like when I went to present our little statement at council, they were definitely like, are y'all working on your annual report? Like, when are we gonna get it? So, I think that mostly I'm just like feeling a certain we have some inertia to overcome, and we have a report for this year to do. And, I feel like no harm in sharing it and sharing it broadly, but, I feel afraid of delaying it.
Yeah, no,
But-
no, you've
But
done.
yeah, what's 1 week at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
so,
You've done an
no, this
incredible job.
is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'll try to, I don't think that, I don't know if we want to put a sort of time limit for ourselves on another round of comments, because then I could just set a date at which
Yeah.
point I would finalize this document, if that makes sense. And then
Yeah.
I could,
Yes.
I could send it to Tom and say, this is the final document, and, from me,
Yeah.
unless other people have other things, and if then we would be able to put it for the 24th.
Yeah.
I guess too, we could consider if, timeline-wise, if we felt comfortable enough with this draft, given what we've talked about today, if, you know, we can make those changes, and if we feel comfortable with Peggy sending it to the police department in advance of the June 24th meeting, because then that would give them an opportunity if they wanted to come and give input at June 24th.
I don't know if I'm looking for them to give input as opposed to
Yeah.
just giving them notice that this is what we're,
So we want to give it to them after June 24th.
yeah.
After it's approved,
After it's
right.
approved.
Yeah, I agree. It's not to say because
Okay.
we want you to shape this. We want to
Right.
be part of you helping us move ahead on these recommendations, and, you know, and we look
Yeah.
forward to, maybe we need to set up some times we can have a discussion with on what's doable, what's not, and here, but not to shape
it.
the
Okay.
There are
Cool.
recommendations.
So can we say, any comments or changes or to this draft, can we get those to Jane by next Friday? Is that enough time?
Right.
May 22nd. And then, Jane, do you want to shoot for June 1 as the final?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
May 22nd. So June 1 is what?
Circulating the,
The most recent draft that incorporated those K.
yeah.
That,
And I could, you know, Tom probably has this in notes too, but I could also make a summary of the edits that I have written down here, so that y'all don't feel like you have to say them again and send that out to the board after this meeting,
okay,
if that would be
Okay.
helpful.
okay, great.
Okay, and then, so June 1, we'll have a final draft to plan to vote on
Right.
for the 24th meeting.
The thing is, the final draft will include comments that you all send in, maybe Katrina, that the rest of us won't have seen, so, you know,
So you need some time to look at it
well,
between
yeah,
June
and like if
1st
you're going to share your letter,
Yeah.
you know, things that are kind of important, so we might,
That's true.
you know, want to
Okay.
comment on those things.
Oh, so do we need another round? Yeah,
Well,
no, which is totally fine.
Okay,
After you,
I'm just
after
gonna
you
request-
submit your draft on June 1st, let the feedback that you get be what guides you as to what you need next.
Okay, yeah. And that-
The one thing I would like to encourage is, after we saw the last couple of days with the changes, that we try to get the Wednesday before the 24th, which was the 17th, as that's the information we want to share with this group. It won't be shared necessarily on the 17th, but that's our cutoff date, because our agenda goes out at least at the latest Monday before the Wednesday, the 22nd. But that gives our office time to put the agenda together, and of course, we're working with another committee and other projects, so we want to be sure
Yes.
we're timely for your benefit.
No, and I think that's why I feel like it's important that we put some dates to this, because, you know, I sort of felt like, well, you know, maybe people are still giving comments, I'm gonna leave it kind of open, you know, so I think we need to kind of like have a cutoff, so that then, you know, we get something which is final to,
okay, so,
but Renee was going to
But
say.
I would say
something.
whatever,
Yeah, Renee.
before the 17th,
just need a
Jane,
5-minute
whatever date
recess.
before the 17th that
Oh,
you
recess
decide.
right now. I think we're,
Please.
yeah, you're right. Oh, I was going to say, I thought we were done, but actually.
okay, we can take a 5-minute
Sure.
recess and we'll resume.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, time kind of flies along, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, let's take 5.
Oh, stand up and make your legs, circulation go back.
yeah, sorry to do that to you, Tom. Yeah, because I feel like too, if, you know, yeah, if you know you need something from us too, just. So many, yeah. Huh? Yeah.
How can we be sure that time and,
Yeah.
for instance, we've got with HRC,
Yeah. That's what they were saying. Uh-huh.
and so they're working on.
Oh, geez.
No, they actually have a 9. Back and forth about. Tell me the microphone was off.
So long. I guess we had like most of a meeting with the initial part of the meeting. Yeah. It's true. Well, it's hard to say what's a brand new thing when we haven't done it in 5 years. It's just a new thing that, to be doing a report. But I do think that the ordinance is pretty clear that like we have the right to do, you know, that our purpose is partially to make recommendations. So it's not required, but it is. I think we're reinventing the wheel, hopefully. Okay, I'm putting these dates in so I don't screw it up this time. Yeah, avoid. Although it seemed already really cleared out when I've been biking through. I'm like, where'd everyone's already gone. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's, come back from our 5-minute recess. So, again, review this draft, submit your comments to Jane by the 22nd. She'll compile that and get that out to us June 1st, and then,
And then any other comments before the 17th?
yeah,
Because I got to get final.
right, final needs to go to Tom on June 17th, so let's say, let's say final comments, the 12th, that Friday before, is that? That's fair to, that'll be fair
If
to.
Jane's comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
That's fine.
all right. Final, okay. Great, okay. Then anything else regarding the annual report? Okay, let's move on to F, new business. We don't have any new business this evening. So we'll move to G, the officers' report. I don't believe we have one from Carla this evening, so we will take that, or Tom, unless you have
That's
something.
correct. I just would add a couple comments, though, almost like announcements. I want to say we're working on Juneteenth programming, which is scheduled for Tuesday, June 16th, with the city. In this room here at 11 a.m., there's going to be a program which we call Reflection and Reverence. It's just an hour-long program, June 16th, Tuesday at 11 a.m. At the same time, outside from 11 a.m. until 2 o'clock, there'll be a food truck rally across the street, not right at Lincoln Square, but a lot across the street from Lincoln Square on that side. So, okay. Juneteenth theme. Okay?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Then we'll move to H, announcements. The board has one vacancy. We're a 7-member board. We were short one. If you are interested in participating and serving on the board, please submit your application online. I believe that's on our website. If there are questions, feel free to contact the board or any of the city officials will direct you to us. Our next meeting is set for June 24th at 5:30 in this room. And with that, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second. Second. And we do this by affirmation. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Motion carries. Meeting is ended. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and time. We'll see you all in a month or so.
Oh, okay, no worry, no worry. Yeah, I feel like actually, this, I think I'm slowly getting a better understanding of the structure. Because it's like you can read the ordinance, it's like, wait, what? What does that mean, really?
Yeah, I mean, 90% of the answers, whatever the ordinance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I could reply to you with what I was thinking at today.